my mother brought me to the local library in, I think, Millburn, New Jersey. And they were showing, I was 5 years old, and they were showing clips from the Universal Monster films. Now, I don't remember all the details, obviously. I was five, but it must have been like Super 8 or 16 millimeter, like these little loops.
Oh,
And
okay.
not loops, but they would show scenes from usually the climactic moments of these monster movies. So you had
Yeah.
The Mummy, and then you had, Bela Lugosi as Dracula rising from the grave. But the one that got me was the burning windmill sequence at the end of James Whale's Frankenstein. I just
Oh,
remember Karloff's face and in
right.
the internal mechanism of the burning windmill. And the next morning I said to my mother, I want to make movies.
Okay, go get married.
Yes, let's get married.
You asshole.
Why?
Don't fucking cheese me with that shit, okay?
Stop.
It ain't cool.
Stop. Annie,
Yeah?
will you marry me?
Seriously?
Seriously.
Mm-hmm. So you wanna get married to me, Vanya? You want me to be your little wifey? Yeah?
Yes. I just think that we had great time together and... Бля, я волнуюсь, на русском скажу. Что? Мне кажется, просто мы бы клево провели время, даже если бы у меня не было денег. And I will become American and my parents will suck my dick.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. And I said it wisely.
Three carrots.
What about 4? Or 5? Or 6?
Welcome to Behind the Lens. Today, he has made many movies, I think 8 now, feature films, and the latest being Anora, which won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, and everyone is seeing now and loving. It's a terrific film. This is Sean Baker. Welcome to Behind the Lens.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you very much.
I remember seeing you in Cannes the day before that, those awards, or shortly before. You had your dog with you.
Yes, yes, you did.
Ran into you in the press area up there.
Yeah.
And little did I know that shortly you're going to win the whole thing.
Little did I know as well. I wasn't expecting it.
That was pretty
definitely wasn't.
amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Pretty great,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
It was my dream come true. So
was it?
yeah, and I'm not embellishing there. It was like literally the dream come true. So yeah, I'm still processing it 5 months later.
Yeah. Well, I'll bet, because they don't tell you anything. They just say show up.
Basically, yeah.
You know you're going to get something.
You get something. But again, with this film, I certainly didn't expect it with this film. It's not like comedies with overt comedies win a Cannes often. So
well,
we were,
but that jury was run by Greta Gerwig, who has an appreciation, I think, for comedy, because a lot of people in the business, comedy's fun and everything. They don't take it as seriously as they take serious pictures.
Yeah, I guess
a serious picture.
It is. I just called it a comedy, but it actually is quite the dramedy. And to tell you the truth, I sometimes even call it a tragedy with just comic elements.
I mean, I heard that you were inspired by Fellini's Nights of Cabiria.
It was definitely one of the influences.
That was one of them, right?
Yeah, and because I consider it one of the earliest examples of like a truly empathetic approach to sex work in cinema, and so yes, that film has had definitely an influence.
Yeah, particularly. If you haven't seen it yet, I don't like to give away endings, but I don't think I'm giving away the ending here in talking about the human emotions that we see at the end of this movie, where we can write our own story for these characters going on, which I love endings like that. But it has a relation to Knights of Cabiria, you know.
It actually does, and I can't go into it too much without having some spoilers here. But I will say that yeah, what you just said is true. I consider endings to be the most important part of cinema storytelling, and I at the same time I really appreciate when I'm an audience member and everything isn't just spelled out for me. I have to think. Sometimes I have to even write the ending or the epilogue, as an audience member. And I think because it keeps the audience engaged, it's what they're gonna be talking about moments later when they're on the sidewalk with their friends. And so to me, it is intentionally left a little open-ended and also left up for interpretation.
As a writer, do you write the ending first?
I actually do.
I know some that do that, so they know exactly where they're going rather than.
I feel I have to, because I don't want to sit down and start writing a screenplay and realizing months down the road I don't know how to end this thing. I need
think Robert Altman suffered from that with some of his films, but
Oh yeah,
yeah, he always got criticized because it's the greatest movie ever made, but the ending sucks.
yeah. No, so that's very important for me to work out at least the beginning and the end before I sit down and start writing the screenplay.
That's good. That's very organized of you.
Yeah, I guess so.
But it helps in the end.
Yeah, it does.
That's your process, as they say.
Yes, that's one of the my methods, I guess you could say.
When people write about you, they talk about how you as a filmmaker are drawn to the fringe of society in some ways. You might call it that. Marginalized communities and people are sex workers in the case of Anora and other films, and Tangerine and other films. Is that your mode as a filmmaker or just happened into it?
I think that I was tackling stories that I hadn't seen tackled by Hollywood film and television as much as I would like to for them to do. So I think perhaps it's a reaction to what I'm not seeing enough of, or my or knowing that my approach might be a little bit different in terms of representation. So I think it's I didn't truly even realize it until perhaps my fourth film. My second film is my second and third film, Takeout and Prince of Broadway, are about undocumented immigrants.
Right.
So they're not sex workers, but yeah, they are on the fringe, as you said. And then my fifth film, was it my fifth? Or I'm sorry, my fourth, started to get into the world of sex work. Yeah. And it was just, and I've been on that path ever since. And I think it's because of the relationships I've made within the sex work world.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that one begets another. You're just going to find more stories to tell.
Exactly, because one film can't represent an entire community or microcosm or livelihood, however you want to see it. So I see all these films as individual films exploring, universal themes, but applied to a specific story that is just a one-off story. So, for example, with Anora, I realized that I was tackling a story about this young woman who realizes a little bit too late that she married the wrong man. It's in the Russian American community of Brighton Beach in Coney Island, Brooklyn. But I had realized I haven't explored escorting yet in my films and erotic dancing. And so this was my chance to explore that aspect of sex work and apply it to that community.
Story, which is such a great story. I love the setting. I love the Coney Island of it all, and everything that where you place it.
Thanks.
But this whole Russian American world that I haven't seen portrayed much in movies, except as mobs or gangsters or whatever they're doing.
Yeah, and at first we were thinking about a Russian gangster story. This is way back when we first started thinking about this, and this goes way back, like 15 years. But you're right, I didn't want to tackle Russian gangster story just because I felt that it was a little cliche. It's been done many times and done well. So I was trying to figure out how else we could tell a similar story. in which somebody marries into a mob-like situation, like a married to the mob
To an
situation. Yes.
oligarchy kind of thing.
So that when we figured out, okay, but let's have her marry the son of a Russian oligarch. There's similarities. It puts her in a similar situation, but it's not another mafia movie.
Right.
That was basically our eureka moment when we figured that out.
And having the wild kid, the Russian kid who's got all the money in the world, and they're away from mom and dad, and they have no control. This thing is worthy of Billy Wilder, just on its comedic level. He would love this movie. I'm telling you right now, because the way it weaves in and out, and I mean, some of it is just. I was laughing hysterically at it. I'm going like, wow, this is different.
That's nice to hear. Thank you. I mean, comedy is a big thing.
And what I'd seen.
Yeah. I've always tried to have comedy throughout all of my films, but usually a little bit, subdued or focused on behavioral comedy, just the humor that comes from two people interacting and sometimes clashing. I love that stuff. But no, this one we were definitely knew that we had to have more comic relief. I mean, we were telling a story that as I said earlier, it's like ultimately a tragedy, but I still want to entertain the audience, and I do want to also point out the absurdity of some of the of the situations in this film, and so therefore it comes with laughs, and I think that's important. Life is a balance of comedy and pathos, right? Totally. I mean, that's what life is. So if you're making a film or telling a story about life, and you leave out one of those two things, you're not being truthful. You're not being real. So
no, it's great. So it's not stupid comedy.
Thank you.
I'm just going to throw everything against the wall and see what lands. These are fully fleshed out characters, 3-dimensional characters. Even when you're getting to the supporting roles, everybody in this, obviously Mikey, Madison, who's your lead, she's fantastic. The Russian kid is
Mark Edelstein, who plays Ivan,
fantastic.
Yeah,
but then Igor,
Yura Borisov,
a brilliant character. You really are rooting for this guy, and you're not at first, but you watch him evolve. And then the other guy, the henchman, basically.
the Armenians, Karin Karagulian and Vache.
SAG as the ensemble category.
Well, I love ensemble casts, and as a director who's made, I don't know how many, I think all 8 films are basically ensemble casts. It's very important for me to never have a weak link. But that's what makes a perfect ensemble cast. And this one is my proudest cast. I'm so proud of this cast. I
walk out of there because I also do the awards season handicapping, and we were talking about supporting actor. I said, let me tell you something. Anora could fill 3 slots on its own. On its own.
That's nice. That's nice.
Worthy to do it. And but down the line, you have a real eye for actors. There's no question. Is that something you've always sort of had?
Well, the actors are the most important thing, right? And so casting is the most important thing when it comes to these sort of movies. So I take on the casting responsibility role, credit, I guess you could say. And I always say the casting by credit is my proudest credit on this film. I mean, that's the truth. I was blessed.
Credit. So you take that action.
Yeah, I do.
It's controversial because casting directors, they call them. The directors don't necessarily like that.
Well, I'm sorry, but I get involved very early, and sometimes it's pre-casting before I even write my screenplay, so it's necessary. And I'm very I'm as we just said, the ensemble cast is so important to me. I want to make sure I'm handpicking every single person. And regarding the pre-casting of it, I actually cast Karin Karagulian, who plays Toros in the film, 15 years ago when we started talking about this. And then Yura Borisov, who plays Igor, when I saw him in a Finnish film called Compartment Number 6.
Which I've seen that,
Wonderful movie.
Classics movie,
Yep. Juho Kusmasen directed it. It's a wonderful movie. It was at Cannes the year I was there with Red Rocket. So I saw him on the big screen. I had already been thinking about this Igor character, and I was like, He's our guy. And then when we got closer to, I guess you could say prep, or not even prep because I hadn't written the screenplay yet, but I was getting close. We decided we are going to move forward with Anora. We better start looking out for our Annie. I went to see Scream opening weekend, and that's where I saw Mikey. And I had already been so intrigued by her from seeing her in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So it was just a combination of those two performances. I knew she was our Annie. I called her agent the second I stepped out of the theater. We had a meeting, and I offered her the role. And then I said, if you take this role, I'll go write the screenplay with you in mind. And that's what I did. And I have to tell you, it was really helpful as a screenwriter to have those three faces in my head as I was fleshing out the story. And so my casting is not just as we're about to go into production. It starts sometimes even years before.
You have one of those great casting stories with Susanna Son from Red
Rocket. Yeah. We were at the ArcLight Cinema, which is now sadly temporarily closed. Okay, good. We were in the lobby of the ArcLight in Hollywood, and we were seeing a film. I think we had just come out, and we spotted Samantha Kwan, who is my wife and producer on the film. We spotted her across the lobby, and she just had that it quality, something that said
Lana Turner in the 1930s at Schwab's drugstore. The myth is, she was discovered, someone saw her, but that actually happened.
We said we should talk to her. There's something special about her. So we went up and we did our spiel, and thank God I was on my sixth film at that point, because I was able to say, I made the Florida Project and Tangerine. It was harder in the past when I didn't have many credits.
You said, hey, would you like to be in a movie?
Yeah. But now it's a little easier. And so she had seen both of those films, and so she was like, I just came to Hollywood to pursue acting. So this is meant to be. And I said, okay. And I actually didn't even have Red Rocket in development yet. So it was almost over a year until I contacted her again. And
oh my God.
She had almost lost faith that I would ever call her. But we did, and it all worked out.
Wow.
And she's been working.
That movie too. Yeah. He was certainly not known as a comedy actor or anybody that was.
Oh, he was known as a comedy actor. Yeah. He was in Scary Movie.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but he was, he hadn't been working a lot at that time. He had been doing a lot of online stuff. That's how I saw him on Vine. Remember that app, Vine? It was like, and he was making me laugh so much. And I said, I'm going to work with this dude someday. And that's what happened. I love my casts.
As well you should.
Yeah.
So Florida Project is another one I looked at, where it's just such a simple, brilliant idea in this motel, basically in Florida, in the shadow of Disney World. And we're looking at these people who sort of are the underdogs in life, and don't have it. And yet there's Fantasyland hovering over them.
Yeah.
And you present these stories in a way, the cinematography, everything else, it's not dark and depressing like their lives might be in other movies.
Yeah, well, I always think of it like this. If somebody came into my life and said, I want to make a film about a narrative fiction film about your life, I would hope that they wouldn't make it bleak and gray. And no matter how much hardship I might be going through, I don't want them to paint my life as just, a colorless.
Slit your wrist.
Yeah, exactly.
Watching these movies where they look at life that way.
Right. And plus, we also were leaning into the fact that, this summer, we wanted to see the summer through the eyes of a child.
Yeah.
And when you're younger, your senses are stronger. You see, colors are brighter and sounds are louder. And, we leaned into the style intentionally because it was a children's story.
Well, she was great. A great find,
Brooklyn Prince.
Yeah, I was in Cannes at Directors Fortnight when that premiered. I went to the morning thing, and she came up in her dress, was there, and it was like, Star is born.
Yeah. And she's been continuing to act. She's had a few series, and she's been doing films. It's really wonderful to see her.
So-
And directing. She's
And
directing too.
directing.
Yeah.
Wow.
She directed a
How
short.
old is she?
She directed a short, and she I believe she's 14 right now.
Oh, wow.
And she also created a graphic novel, a comic book. She
Amazing.
created a comic book. It's crazy.
Little discoveries,
Yeah,
discoveries along the way. You always knew, like me, you were always into movies, I understand,
Yes.
from a very early age. We're lucky because we always knew what we wanted to do, I think. A lot of people think, wow, you knew that at 7 years old? Yeah, I had movie theaters in my room, and I was like cutting out the ads and all of that. That was you, right?
Yeah, it was.
And all of that?
Yeah,
How did you know?
my mother brought me to the local library in, I think, Milburn, New Jersey. And they were showing, I was 5 years old, and they were showing clips from the Universal monster films. Now, I don't remember all the details, obviously. I was 5, but it must have been a Super 8 or 16 millimeter, like these little loops.
Oh.
And not loops, but they would show scenes from usually the climactic moments of these monster movies. So you had The Mummy, and they had, Bela Lugosi's Dracula rising from the grave. But the one that got me was the burning windmill sequence at the end of James Whale's Frankenstein. I just remember Karloff's face and in the internal mechanism of the burning windmill. And the next morning I said to my mother, I want to make movies. So that's when it happened. And then I did the cliche route of like making my Super 8 movies, my home movies, and then graduating to VHS and hoping to go to film school at some point. And I did. So that route.
You followed the path and were successful about it. Not everybody is in doing that and being able to transfer that. I like with Tangerine, you were positively innovative, I think, using the iPhone and the way you shot that, and
thanks.
These kinds of things. You're constantly experimenting in ways to shoot these pictures.
Well, I think cinema is always evolving, and it's good for filmmakers to try new things. I have to be honest, though, with Tangerine, it did come from a budgetary constraint. I thought after making a film called Starlet, that was going to be my breakout, meaning I was going to be able to easily find a financier for my next film. It didn't happen. So Mark and Jay Duplass were nice enough to reach out to me and offer me a certain amount of money. And it was small. It was actually much less money than I had on my previous film. But the opportunity was there, and I said, okay, I moved forward with it. But there wasn't enough money to shoot on even the cameras that were probably being shot on now. I mean, no, I said the only way to do this is if I shoot on something that I already have. And what do I have? An iPhone. And it was just at that time where the iPhone had jumped from version or the Model 5 to the 5S, where it became HD. And there were some third-party, there was an app and an anamorphic lens that a third party had made for the iPhone. So it was just the right year for it. Yeah. And I went ahead and made Tangerine. We got into Sundance, and I honestly was expecting about 20 films that year to be shot on the iPhone because it just seemed, why not?
Sure.
Tools were now available to everybody, but we were the only ones. And I think we made a splash because of it. Yeah. It wasn't meant as a stunt, but kind of worked as a stunt.
No, it became a story, on its own.
Yeah.
That you were able to do that.
Right.
But that's what, in the history of movies, it's always, Orson Welles with Citizen Kane, trying something new, other than just doing the same old thing over and over and over again. That's not, movies aren't going to advance. And
exactly. And at the same time, though, I am trying to be an advocate for celluloid. I've shot, my last 3 films have been shot on film, 35, 16, and 35 again, because I've had the budget to do it. And I do appreciate the aesthetic look of film over anything else. And it's like, if a lot of films these days are being shot digitally, but trying to look like film. And I really don't understand that. I mean, I understand that, yes, film is a little more expensive, but for me, you either shoot on film, or if you're shooting digitally, shoot on something very different. Shoot on something that doesn't look like film, like the iPhone or some other prosumer camera, or something that really it can do something that film can't. You know, if you shoot on the iPhone, you can take this little iPhone and put it into corners and get shots that you would never be able to do with a big 35 millimeter camera.
Sure,
So take advantage of that. That's what I like to, when I give advice to like up and coming filmmakers, that's what I say. I mean, like, you either shoot on film or shoot on something so different in the digital world.
So are we ever going to see you move into the major studio kind of movies?
I don't really see the need to, meaning that I'm very lucky to be in a place right now where I'm able to make the type of movies I want to make the way I want to make them.
Yeah.
You know, it's very, I don't even know if the script for Anora would get past one stage of notes from the studio, right? I mean, look at the subject matter. It's a little, yeah. And so I've been lucky enough to be here, and I think that the Palme d'Or has really helped me stay here in this lane without hearing a lot of the noise. You know, I have been almost seduced many times.
Have
but
you?
yeah, and it's only been fate that has gotten in the way of me taking on a big series or something like that. Yeah, but now I'm here and I'm like, okay, I can stay in my lane without the resistance. You know. Yeah.
Well, I hope you do.
Yeah, thanks.
Because, as a film critic, you know, you see so many things that are just so derivative, but that's what people are going to. And so when you make a movie like this and you watch incrementally the grosses go up week after week, that means people are telling their friends and they're seeing something we're seeing. And then these movies can continue to get made.
Yeah, it's been wonderful to see, to feel this word of mouth that's been happening with Anora. The word is spreading. And I think it's because, you know, I think audiences are happy to see this sort of movie in theaters again. I mean,
It's definitely a theatrical experience. You want to share it with people.
That's what I've been hearing. And I have been seeing, and audiences seem to be, you know, they're laughing, the energy is there in the room. It's a very, it's a communal experience, you know, and people are, I think, enjoying seeing it with a crowd. Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And the posters are great too.
Oh,
the
thanks.
billboard going down La Cienega, I saw it, and you know, it's eye-popping.
It is. It's some provocative imagery. And Neon has been wonderful. I mean, they really understood my vision for the film and even how I would like to sell the film, because the film does harken back to films of the 70s. Right. You know, sometimes using the imagery from like the sexploitation films of that time. And yeah, it's incredible to see what billboards all around town. Yeah.
It's working.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us on Behind the Lens.
Thank you very much.
Great.
It's been wonderful. Thanks.